The Guardians by Irving Cox, Jr. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Bologna Times. The Guardians by Irving Cox, Jr. It's not always the truth shall set you free. Sometimes it's want of the truth shall drive you to escape. And that can be dangerous. Myrna Brill intended to ride the God car above the rain mist. For a long time she had not believed in the taboos or the earth god. She no longer believed she lived on earth. This paradise of green-floored forests and running brooks was sometimes called Rythar. 6 years ago, when Myrna was 14, she first discovered the truth. She asked a question, and the earth god ignored it. A simple question, really. What is above the rain mist? God could have told her. Every day he answered technical questions that were far more difficult. Instead, he repeated the familiar taboo about avoiding the old village because of the sickness. And consequently, Myrna, being female, went to the old village. There was nothing really unusual about that. All the kids went through the ruins from time to time. They had worked out a sort of charm that made it all right. They ran past the burned-out shells of the old houses, and they kept their eyes shaded to ward off the sickness. But even at 14, Myrna had outgrown charms, and she didn't believe in the sickness. She had once asked the earth god what sickness meant, and the screen in the answer house had given her a very detailed answer. Myrna knew that none of the 100 girls and 30 boys inhabiting Rythar had ever been sick. That, like the taboo of the old village, she considered a childish superstition. The old village wasn't large. 3 parallel roads, a mile long, lined with the charred ruins of prefabs, which were exactly like the cottages where the kids lived. It was nothing to inspire either fear or legend. The village had burned a long time ago. The grass from the forest had grown a green mantle over the skeletal walls. For weeks Myrna poked through the ruins before she found anything of significance. A few scorched pages of a printed pamphlet buried deep in the black earth. The paper excited her tremendously. It was different from the film books photographed in the answer house. She had never touched anything like it, and it seemed wonderful stuff. She read the pamphlet eagerly. It was part of a promotional advertisement of a world called Rythar, the jewel of the Syrian solar system. The description made it obvious that Rythar was the green paradise where Myrna lived, the place she had been taught to call Earth, and the pamphlet had been addressed to Earthmen everywhere. Myrna made her second find when she was 15, a textbook in astronomy. For the first time in her life she read about the spinning dust of the universe lying beyond the eternal rain mist that hid her world. The solid, stable earth of her childhood was solid and stable no more, but a sphere turning through a black void. Nor was it properly called Earth, but a planet called Rythar. The adjustment Myrna had to make was shattering. She lost faith in everything she believed. Yet the clockwork logic of astronomy appealed to her orderly mind. It explained why the rain mist glowed with light during the day and turned dark at night. Myrna had never seen a clear sky. She had no visual data to tie her new concept to. For 6 years she kept the secret. She hid the papers and the astronomy text, which she found in the old village. Later, after the metalmen came, she destroyed everything so none of the other women would know the earth god was a man. At first she kept the secret because she was afraid. For some reason, the man who played at being God wanted the kids to believe Rythar was Earth, the totality of the universe enveloped in a cloud of mist. She knew that because she once asked God what a planet was. The face on the screen in the answer house became frigid with anger. Or was it fear? And the Earth god said, "The word means nothing." But late that night, a very large god car brought 6 metal men down through the rain mist. They were huge, jointed things that clanked when they walked. 4 of them used weapons to herd the kids together in their small settlement. The 2 others went to the old village and blasted the ruins with high explosives. Vaguely, Myrna remembered that the metal men had been there before, when the kids were still very small. They had built the new settlement, and they had brought food. They lived with the children for a long time, she thought, but the memory was hazy. As the years passed, Myrna's fear retreated, and only one thing became important. She knew the Earth god was a man. On the fertile soil of Rythar, there were 100 women and 30 men. All the boys had taken mates before they reached 17. 70 girls were left unmarried, with no prospect of ever having husbands. A score or more became second wives in polygamous homes. But plural marriage had no appeal for Myrna. She was firmly determined to possess a man of her own, and why shouldn't it be the Earth god? As her first step toward escape, Myrna volunteered for duty in the answer house. For as long as she could remember, the answer house had stood on a knoll some distance beyond the new settlement. It was a square, one-room building, housing a speaking box, a glass screen, and a console of transmission machinery. Anyone in the settlement could contact God and request information or special equipment. God went out of his way to deluge them with information. The simplest question produced voluminous data, transmitted over the screen and photographed on reels of film. Someone had to be in the answer house to handle the photography. The work was not hard, but it was monotonous. Most of the kids preferred to farm the fields or dig the sacrificial ore. A request for equipment was granted just as promptly. Tools, machines, seeds, fertilizers, packaged buildings, games, clothing, everything came in a god car. It was a large cylinder which hissed down from the rain mist on a pillar of fire. The landing site was a flat charred field near the answer house. Unless the equipment was unusually heavy, the attendant stationed in the house was expected to unload the god car and pile aboard the sacrifice ores mined on Rythar. God asked 2 things from the settlement: the pieces of unusually heavy metal which they dug from the hills, and tiny vials of soil. In an hour's time they could mine enough ore to fill the compartment of a god car, and God never complained if they sometimes sent the cylinder back empty. But he fussed mightily over the small vials of earth. He gave very explicit directions as to where they were to take the samples, and the place was never the same. Sometimes they had to travel miles from the settlement to satisfy that inexplicable whim. For 2 weeks, Myrna patiently ran off the endless films of new books and unloaded the god car when it came. She examined the interior of the cylinder carefully, and she weighed every possible risk. The compartment was very small, but she concluded that she would be safe. And so she made her decision. Tense and tight-lipped, Myrna Brill slipped aboard the god car. She sealed the locked door, which automatically fired the launching tubes. After that, there was no turning back. The dark compartment shook in a thunder of sound. The weight of the escape speed tore at her body, pulling her tight against the confining walls. She lost consciousness until the pressure lessened. The metal walls became hot, but the space was too confining for her to avoid contact entirely. 4 narrow light tubes came on, with a dull red glow, and suddenly a gelatinous liquid emptied out of ceiling vents. The fluid sprayed every exposed surface in the cubicle, draining through the shipment of sacrifice ores at Myrna's feet. It had a choking, antiseptic odor. It stung Myrna's face and inflamed her eyes. Worse still, as the liquid soaked into her clothing, it disintegrated the fiber, tearing away